This is section 2.1 part 2 where we will identify functions, and in part 1 we actually identified a function as well using the method the vertical line test, which is perfectly acceptable, but in order to use the vertical line test you either A, need to already have a graph with a relation graphed, or you have to draw one yourself. So if you don't have one, it can be time consuming and tedious to draw one, but if that's your method of choice, go ahead and do that. If you would prefer not to, though, I have other methods that we'll see here in this part. But before we start looking at the methods, let's first see what a function is and what a function isn't. So here we see the definition of function basically is every input, which is, remember, our x value. It's our domains. Our inputs are our domains. So every input, our x values, has exactly one output, meaning your y value. So every single input has exactly one output. Not a function is when you have an input, your x value, that has more than one output, y value. So your input, the number that for your x, either occurs more than once, or you may see a line coming out of it, more than one line coming out of your x value. So here we have our first problem. Alright, we've got all our inputs here, all our outputs here, and then these lines tell you, okay, you plug in your input, what comes out, that's your number. Alright, so for our input of 3, the output is 2. For the input of -1, the output is 3. Input of 2, output is -4. Input of 4, output is -4. So remember, you have a function if every input has exactly one output. You want to ask yourself, how many outputs does each number have? 3 has one output, -1 has one output, 2 has one output, and 4 has one output. So does every input have exactly one output? Yes, it does. Alright, so here we have a function. Alright, because every input has exactly one output. It's okay that your outputs occur more than once. It's not okay if your inputs occur more than once. Second problem, you may have a relation that looks like this, similarly to what we had in part 1. So you could graph this if you wanted to. Alright, but remember what we did in part 1 is we said look at your x values. If your x values repeat, then you're not going to have a function. So looking at our x values, we've got -2, 1, 1, and 4. And I see a problem here. I see an x value of 1 and another x value of 1. Those numbers repeat. Alright, so we do not have a function, because every input doesn't have exactly one output. Right? -2 has one output. What is it? 4. 1 has an output of -1, but it also has an output of 2. Alright, so has 2 outputs. Every input must have only one output. 1 has 2 outputs. Alright, so we don't have a function here.